So when I was imagining what we would do in this chat, I was hoping that it would not be on a stage and rather we all be sitting around having really a chat. And I would tell you a bunch of secrets about how life really functions behind the scenes in commercial practice. And you could ask me a lot of questions and I'd just give you some straight up answers, but this is not going to happen. It's going to be a little more formal. So I'm still going to tell you some secrets, but we're going to have a clicker and there's going to be a big screen above my head. So I can't see you all, but I will be able to see your hands enough to be able to tell how many in the room are in the interior design department, in the interior design curriculum. Okay, a lot. Architecture, 1 or 2. And then fine arts, like painting, drawing, print, anything that's kind of medium-based like that. Oh, thanks. Okay, so quite a few too. And then what did I miss? Anything other? Perfect. All right. So, yeah? I'm sitting here in front of you as a commercial designer, architecture background and interior design, but I want to tell you that the work I'm going to show you right now in the context of commercial design has a place for all of you in this room, if you so chose. So, and I'm hoping that running through the projects that I'm about to show you will prove that theory. Now that said, I also kind of subscribe to one golden rule that my grandfather told me, which was that opinions are like everybody's got one, which also means don't listen to anybody's opinion. So this is all opinion-based and take it or leave it, right? Good. Off we go. So the thesis of this discussion is you are the sum of your worldview, that experience equals perspective. You kind of bumble your way through life. You are in school right now. You're all brilliant people getting degrees, which is excellent. You've earned your way here. You're very busy. You're working hard. You're exhausted. The students I was with today are very exhausted. And you're putting together the things you need, your resume, so that you can move forward, but you bring to the table some pretty key ingredients. So this is me. I bring to the table core values, principles, friends, hobbies, my family. You know, the stuff that we all come forward with as our core ingredients. This is you. You bring the same stuff. It kind of looks a little different. Your recipe's a little different, but essentially you and me are the same, aren't we? All that to say, we kind of have a similar perspective. We have different family constructs, we come from different places, but we're essentially same human beings. But we're all coming to the game to try and build up education, experience, the same kind of a resume. So my education is this. I've got 3 degrees, I did a couple of undergrads, and then I did interior design, I did fine arts, and then I did architecture eventually at IIT in Chicago. I keep wanting to call him Dare Bear, so I'm just going to do it on a stage because that's fun. I spent a little bit of time in Ghana, West Africa, doing this leadership thing. That was fun. So there's my education. You have yours too. I'm putting it in quotation marks because everybody's trying to build up their education resume. Same for employment. Here's mine. I've jumped around a bit. Gensler, SOM. You know, trying to sort of get the big dogs on the resume. We're all trying to do this. This is the proverbial chess game of life, right? We're trying to pad out and build out a good-looking resume. I'm at HKS now. I spent some time in the Middle East. So here's my quote, employment. You're going to have yours too. More importantly, in my opinion, remember what I said about opinions? In my opinion, projects are more important for all of us in this room because we're all creatives. And I'll tell you why I think projects are more important as we get into this. But here's where my projects shake out. And I'm putting this all on the world map because global perspective reigns supreme. So my my projects tend to kind of cover the world map. I'm a global practitioner, and as I keep going through this game, am I hitting this in the wrong way? Okay. But the most important point is that as all of these elements overlay, look what happens. Perspective. So I'm not thinking of this so much as my education, my employment, my projects. Rather, there's all these kind of anecdotal tidbits, these memories, these things that come with them that start to fill out my story and my worldview. So you're reading a bunch of kind of dumb things that come around these big buckets of geographical regions, me living in North America, me living in the Middle East, me spending time in Europe and all these other places, which are, like when I think of time in Asia, the first thing that comes to mind is eating revolting bird's nest soup, which is very expensive stuff, but you have to eat it in front of people because they're very proud that they spend all this time, and it's extremely ceremonial. That's that comes to mind. But that cultural memory and association I carry with me, and I will carry with me as I go to design a project in China, and I meet with clients, and so on and so forth. This is sort of rounding out my worldview, and you all have memories and associations like this. Experience equals perspective. You all have these things, these moments, these anecdotes, and it's more important than the employment, the education, the kind of dots on the resume. So as Dare Bear said, I'm the incoming chair for the American Society of Interior Designers next year, 2020. And at the moment, we're working on this thesis called Design Impacts Life, which is to say that interior design as a topic, as an industry header, is in its next iterative state. It's changing. It's morphing into something that I feel is becoming more substantial. And that is that it's focused towards design outcomes. It's probably focused more on research, behavioral science, hard science, soft science, all coming together to substantiate design. And so what I'll show you as we move through the projects that I'm gonna take you through is that this is sort of my end state. So my perspective is ending here on Design Impacts Life. I'm not gonna read this to you, but I think that this is a very important sort of developing hypothesis. Okay, so I'm gonna show you 10 projects. Please bear with me. I'm not going to describe the projects like a lot of architects and designers do in detail. It was this many square feet, we built it on this date, this was the client. Rather, I thought I'd tell you a story, like that slide where I overlaid education, employment, and projects. I thought I'd tell you a story about the project that sort of flags a memory and maybe demonstrated the opportunity around that project. Hoping that when a job or a project is presented to you as you get your first job or your second job or whatever your next opportunity is, you see it for the opportunity and see what that might do for you as you develop as professionals. So this is what a project team tends to look like. This is what I believe is kind of the contemporary construct of a team. Do you see all the players involved anymore? It's not just an interior designer, an architect, a structural engineer, an MEP engineer, project manager. There are so many people and players now that there's literally room for everybody. You need graphic communicators, you need digital specialists, you need different kinds of principals and people to manage contracts, and the contracts are so complicated anymore, and they happen in so many geographical regions that you're going to find that you'll start to sort yourselves out very quickly as you enter the professional realm. So I can't say this enough, that there really is room for everybody. There'll be some of you sitting here that say, I'm more technical or I'm more creative. and you're sort of measuring yourself against one another, and that's just not the right thing to do, because there is a need for technical players and a need for creative players, a need for managers. Some of you probably like to be the leaders of the group and sort of manage the others. There's a need for that too. Some of you probably like to work in isolation. Some of you probably like to work in a group. There's a need for all of that, I promise you. But you know, the construct of the team is ever-changing and becoming so complicated it's hard to keep up. The first project I'm showing you, you're going to look at and go, I don't even know what that looks like, and that's for good reason, because it was top secret, so there it is, nothing. But this was my project, a project of mine when I was at SOM, kind of a minute out of school, out of architecture school, and a principal said, would you like to work for the King of Jordan? Okay. What are we going to do? We're going to do the National Security Center, and it's a bunker underground, but you know, you can't build it, and it's top secret, and we're going to do a high-level security clearance. Okay. And you can't show anybody your drawings. Okay. So, I mean, that all sounded kind of James Bond cool to me, so I just said, sign me up, and we'll do that. But what it did was it put me in direct proximity to some incredible design principles at Skidmore. Excellent choice. It also allowed me to design directly for the King of Jordan, King Abdullah. Excellent choice indeed. And it was a very cool project. So the team for this one was pretty straightforward though. So that slide I just showed you this many slides ago, so this is a very contemporary looking team. This one, a long time ago, was pretty simple. This is an architect, an interior designer, a structural engineer, a security consultant, obviously, a couple of other players. In my mind, this is really what a team looked like. Pretty straightforward. Sorry about the crappy renderings, but that's kind of all we had at the time. I think we were using like 3D Max, and we thought that was awesome. Now that just looks shitty, but actually, the renderings I saw today, you all are laughing right now looking at this, but we thought we were amazing. But this project was an amazing opportunity. I mean, you're out of school and you're designing alongside the senior design principals at Skidmore, and they say, let's get on a plane and go present to King Abdullah. Take the opportunity for what it is and do not ask twice, just do it. And I like to tell this story. You know, I had no money. I had a lot of student loans at this time, and I'm hesitating. I'm almost embarrassed to tell you this. Said, you need to buy a suit to come with us, and I'm like, I'm good. And he said, no, you need to go to Barney's and buy a suit. And I had no money, but I went to Barney's and got a credit card so that I could do my suit on credit and paid that damn suit off over 12 or 16 months or whatever it was, pretending like I was the boss so I could get on the plane and go to Jordan and make the presentation. But you do whatever it takes at that moment for the opportunity. And this was a great opportunity. When we flew to Jordan to make the presentation, civil war, or a war, broke out between Israel and Lebanon, literally the minute we landed, and Jordan, who is the regional broker of peace, actually stepped in to do exactly that, and we were trapped in Jordan, the whole group of us, for a couple of weeks. So, you know, these things just bring such incredible stories with them. Okay, so the Burj Khalifa. Would you like to do some bathroom details for the Burj Khalifa? Yes, I would. And then would you like to start designing on the chairman's suite for the Burj Khalifa because you were already in the project? Yes, I would. You know, what is the opportunity in stepping into the world's tallest building when somebody says, you know, we're shorthanded, would you like to get into some bathroom details? That's really the joke. I don't want to do bathroom details. Everybody says that when they're in architecture school. Do the damn bathroom details, because they'll lead to so many other things, like designing on the world's tallest building. And so that provides lessons that you may not be privy to, like how to design sloshing dampers, which is an incredible lesson in structural engineering, which is basically how to stabilize, you know, a superstructure that sways by meters each day. And as an interior designer or as an architect, you don't necessarily learn that in school, do you? But you learn that on the project by working with some of the most brilliant structural engineers in the world on a project like this. So these are some of the earlier renderings for the chairman's suite, which is the very top of the Burj Khalifa. UNC Bioinformatics building, which is in North Carolina at Chapel Hill. This project taught me really the power of interior design, that there is no separation truly between the interior environment and the skin of the building in terms of this concept of address. You hear about, you hear the term address, and you can't tell me that as the building transitions from day to night, that interior environment is not as important as the curtain wall, when it becomes a lanterned condition, illuminated by night. So what does this do? This equally aligns the interiors folks with the architects as they start to plan through the building and, the placement of volumes to the interior. Ceremonial stairs, integrating specialty consultants, like a gentleman named Jamie Carpenter in New York City who works in dichroic glass and steel, and just creating the perfect dinner party of consultants to make sure those elements are perfectly synced up. So my story with this one, I asked Darren if I should tell this, and he said yeah. So here, oh, by the way, you see that red blobby thing? That is a 7-Eleven. Like, don't you dare put a 7-Eleven in my beautiful Miesian pavilion at the bottom of the building. So when they say they're going to put hot dogs and coffee in the bottom, you're like, hang on a second, I'm going to design something to go around that, so we hide the hot dogs and coffee. And here it is. There were a group of, I cannot fully describe the data processing nerds. They're called bioinformatic data collectors, so they basically grow and harvest specimens on the roof, and then they collect the data and process the analytics in a group of workstations in basically these work groups or work pods on each of the floors. And so they said, would you like to have a go at designing some prototypes for these guys, these bioinformatic workstations? And we said, sure. So, and also a matter of addressing, they'd be extremely visible from the plaza, and a recruitment mechanism. So we designed this like Chinese checkerboard for these sort of egg-shaped pods that could be closed down for total privacy or opened up for collaboration. And one of the partners at Skidmore, we pinned it up on the wall, and he goes, do you guys know anything about furniture? You know the sort of like the urban myth of SOM, where you just sort of get like taken to task in front of your peers. It's true, it's not an urban myth. And so we sort of hung our heads low and walked. Well, anyway, this was the project, and it was selected and published in the SOM Journal number 5, taken full credit by, do you guys know anything about? So the lesson in that story is be bold and try it and put your stuff on the wall and stand by it and say, yes, I do. I do know a little something about something. Try big ideas. Okay, chair prototype. So this is a tiny little nothing of a project. If somebody says, after hours, would you like to have a go at using some Formica sheet material and design a chair, basically to enter a design competition? The answer is yes, because it could be collected by the Cincinnati Museum of Modern Art into their permanent collection and sent on exhibit with them, the likes of Zaha Hadid and Peter Eisenman and others. It is still on permanent collection, and it was a very nice resolution. So there are opportunities in everything. It was a little extra work, and we were tired and probably didn't have the bandwidth to do it, but this is just like do the bathroom details, spend the extra couple of hours and design the chair and see what happens with it. All All right, so the Yaz Hotel, this is moving now from North America, from SOM, jumping over to the Middle East. And I took a job with a company called Aldar. Is anybody in this room from the Middle East? Show of hands. One? Assalamu alaikum. Know Aldar? Maybe? Okay. So when I left SOM, the question was, A, why would you leave? Okay, and then B, why would you leave a consulting job, so working for a design firm, to go work for, basically, in their words, a developer? But this was a sovereign landowner, the largest sovereign landowner in Abu Dhabi at the time. And they owned areas called Raha Beach and Yaz Island, and were in the process of basically building out the area that would become the Formula One marina. So I did so because I was kind of bitching to my husband about this or that, as we all do, because we're designers and we are so good at bitching. You know, you're home and you're tired and you're like, I'm going to do my, like I have time for that. So he says, well, why don't you go and work for a developer then? You know, you're so smart. So I did do that. And he was quite clever about that, because working for a sovereign landowner taught me a lot about constructing deals, all of the stuff that you are not exposed to as a design consultant. In other words, the balance of the equation, how you make money, the business of land ownership, the business of design, how you construct management agreements. You know, there are so many other people that exist in this equation. Management agreements, how you include hotel owners, how you onboard staff, how do you hire a chef, how do you design a menu. I mean, there's so many other pieces that are part of this that we never see as designers. And I did learn that. Never mind that in the Middle East, you build big and you build fast. In North America, we don't. We build very slow. We're extremely conservative because we are a litigious society. But we built this building in 18 months. I mean, you have piles in the ground and you're still designing, you're still making drawings. So when I arrived, this was all sand. There was no marina. We basically took out the dirt and we flooded this thing while we were building the building as well. And we also built 6 other hotels around it. So it was 7 hotels total over 18 months. Other hotels around that yet. See that the Formula One track went down with it. So this was, you know, unprecedented, more infrastructure than I can fully describe to you right now. This is 500 keys. Over 2 towers, and you can see the bridge spanning the middle. Well, the Formula One track goes under that bridge, so there's a hairpin turn that basically penetrates the building. So we constructed the bridge seismically so that it could take the vibration of the cars coming through the middle of it. We signed up folks like, do any of you know Georges V from Paris? You know the Buddha Bar, the record label, the Buddha Bar? Do you like house music, lounge music? Bar Lottie, okay. So the Buddha Bar, you know, we signed them up to do some of the specialty bars, like that bridge bar and the roof bar, sort of an Ibiza concept. So we, you know, brought in people like this. So you're not only building the building, but you're constructing the feeling, the sentiment, the experience. You're, as I said, you're building the menu, you know, everything that comes with it. My responsibility on this was the interiors, end to end, down to the experience. And that also includes things like procurement, uniform design, like all of the pieces. What an experience. I learned more doing this stuff than I would have, you know, sitting doing drawings at SOM in Chicago. Just a great experience. So here it is, flooded. Here are the yachts that show up for Formula One. My anecdotal stories on this is like, you know, aside from doing the architecture, there are concerts and stuff that goes on there for Formula One, and you have to sign up, you know, like rock bands to come and stay in your hotel and all these other people so that you can hype that up too. And it turns out Aerosmith and Beyonce can't stay in the same hotel because that's not cool. So like you have to book these guys at other hotels. It's very complicated. They have like entourage and like first need. It's a total pain in the ass, but you learn this stuff too. There are spas. The food and beverage programming is also unprecedented. So this hotel had 14 food and beverage venues inside of it. Rooftop bars, 2 pools, views of the rooftop. At night, we also had, the full of that grid shell piece was LED controlled from a different continent, in fact. So now we've got digital designers and LED controls from elsewhere. If that goes down, you've got, I don't even really know how you manage that from another continent, but it's extremely stressful. Okay, so now I've flown back to North America. By the way, pause, somewhere in there I had a baby. And I want to talk about that. So for those of you ladies in the room planning to have children, there's like some strategic planning involved in this too. As a professional woman, I like to make note of that. You can do it all, you can do both, but you have to be kind of smart about it. I waited a little bit later in life. I think, my generation, it was such that I wanted to make sure that I was well on my way so that I wasn't held back as a result of having children. So I was, late 30s when I had mine. But I sort of took pause at that moment, just like taking a new job. That was planned just like having a new job. So I really take note of that. Like, I think I even noted it on the employment slide, maternity leave. It is no different than taking a job. SOM, Gensler, maternity leave. You have to think of it that way and be deliberate in it, deliberate and resolute in your decision. And I'm speaking to both the. It takes a boy and a girl to do this, and we can talk about that if you want. But you need to be resolute in this decision that is part of your life, your chronology, your career. But, account for that, just like everything else, is my point. So at this point, there is now a child involved. Things become infinitely more complicated. Now we're back in North America, North American values. I'm saying this because I've had the Abu Dhabi experience, the introduction of infinite consultants, access to people worldwide now that I didn't know existed before. So now we can get a little crazy with design in North America. Reunion Tower was my first kind of like access to the sandbox back home. And this is where I really started experimenting with digital design and specialty fabrication. Is anybody in this room kind of into digital design, into this realm? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, all right. So I'm showing you this. So that first slide that I showed you, that was, I would call more traditional, architect, structural engineer, interior designer. I'd call that straight up traditional team structure. Now we've sprinkled in a digital designer, a computational designer, a specialty fabricator. I would call this, now we're getting a little more atypical, tilting towards a more contemporary team structure. I would say this is more atypical. Not everybody does this. As a result of this project, we were invited to lecture at South by Southwest and talk about what we call spatially literate design, which is to say that we can start describing space using digital. And I like to say that you can throw digital into your toolbox just like concrete, steel, glass, any of those kind of materials. Put digital on that list. Digital defines space just like a base material. So light and digital, along with a specialty fabricator, so using steel and other constructs, do a lot for space. I mean, aside from conveying information, which this does, this also, I look at this slide and I'm already, looks dated, because it was. We weren't quite there yet. We were using monitors that were not bezel-less. We did the best we could, and we were already using, things that were off-market, just waiting for them to kind of be developed, and then we were taking them before they were even available to the general public, and it still looks kind of, we're way beyond this now. But, we were doing a lot using LED. We also had areas that we were extremely budget constrained, and we were like, let us have a go at centrally located stairs up the center of this observation deck tower. Basically, hey, did anybody used to watch the soap opera Dallas? Maybe? You're like way too young for this, I know. The original Dallas, in the original, Dare Bear did, right? The original fly-through, the ball on the stick, that's this tower. We renovated that tower. That's what this is. So the exit stair goes up the stick. The ball on the top is this renovation. It was hideous. Like the grease traps had been just emptying down the middle when we took it for decades. Anyway, so, we did the best we could. Basically from Home Depot and I don't even know what. But, this is the job of the designer sometimes. But I think the project was significant for us because we made some brilliant friends who became our tight team, like our clique of digital designers and fabricators that we have used on every project since. From Los Angeles and San Francisco to Philadelphia. So here's our team in the factory. Man, we love some steel. Also applying straight up hospitality principles to retail and other project types. I know a lot of you this morning said I love hospitality. So that's great. That doesn't mean you have to do hospitality. Doesn't mean that you have to do hotels proper necessarily. Hospitality exists in everything. I promise you this. Hospitality exists in healthcare. Hospitality exists in education. You can apply hospitality principles everywhere. This is a furniture showroom. You can also apply like big bravado architectural thinking to a retail showroom. So Holly Hunt, does anybody here know her? Her furniture line is robust, it's bold, her personality is the same. And so to be able to support that kind of a collection, you need to be similar in your thinking. Big, bold architectural materials, palette. So, to an interior project, you've got to come up, her precedent was Tadeo Ando, that should tell you everything. So it's concrete and steel, isn't it? So to an interior renovation, we added a clear story, steel stair, an elevator, glass, and concrete. That's the palette. And meat hooks, because that's what we do. We just add some meat hooks in, and voila, space. Yeah. You know what this space is missing? Some meat hooks. That space won the National Retail Design Award in 2014. Okay, so now we're to, I'm going to totally make fun of this project and myself, but it's one of my favorite interior renovations so far. This is Sky Space in Los Angeles. Anybody here from LA? This is the tallest tower. It's the Paycobb Friedman Tower in the center of LA. It has the Art Deco crown to the center. We completely ruined the building and popped out the side of the building and dangled a glass slide off the side of it. Has anybody seen like a Kardashian selfie coming down the glass slide? It was also on Jimmy Kimmel when it opened. That's our project. Sorry for ruining that nice building. But every observation deck needs a thrill, and that's what we did. So the lesson in this project is really, I think, a philosophy that's been burgeoning over the last 20 years for us, which is resist the temptation to design with materials. And this is for all the architects and interior designers in the room. You did not design with materials. You design with sectional thinking and with an experience. So that means you lead with a concept and a narrative first. And I always say, please count up the materials in this space, and there are under 5. And this topographical wall, which you saw on this slide first, is something that we invented. So when I say that we really sharpened our pencils and became good at specialty fabrication, which is essentially the end result of computational design, that's a material that we invented, which had to be both, had to meet the conditions of very stringent Los Angeles fire codes and be, again, seismically designed. So it's hung and has to, be able to, it's earthquake resistant, so it's got to move and stabilize itself. So when I say resist the temptation to design with materials, we're designing for light, shadow, we're designing for clear paths of circulation, and when we use materials, they're beautiful and deliberate. This is the core experience, so this is where guests queue and enter the elevator, which could have just been a corridor leading to an elevator, but instead it's a totally immersive digital experience that's also transformative, so it's moving, it's light and image. We also took out a section of slab. So, you know, when you take the glass slide down, you got to get back up. So we dropped a stair through. This is the transfer level at level 54. So instead of just, you know, getting off an elevator and moving to the next elevator, there's another digital experience, which is also educational. So one is learning something about Los Angeles. We ran out of money at the ground level because we spent it all on the other stuff. So then we did a piece of wall covering. And, you know, to the artists in the room, there was an illustrator in our office who, you know, doodled for his kids on the weekend. So we had him doodle a really great mural of things that he found interesting about LA, and then had our graphic designer repeat that over a length of 75 lineal feet. To do a custom wall covering, and then we just foil tipped his illustrative work, and we did this really gorgeous wall covering. That's what you're seeing behind the woman walking. So you can do some very expensive solutions, and you can do some very inexpensive solutions in these spaces. And that's the new terrace that was not accessible before we came at the space with the new suicide rail. And I'm just showing you some of the computational modeling for that, for the piece down on low level. And these are the mock-up samples. I actually included this for you all. You've seen this in our lectures from before, but these are the 2x2 mock-up samples for you all who presented this morning. And that sculpted piece was our nod to the Hollywood Hills signs. So this is our typographical, topographical wall installation. All white so that it was just light and shadow play. This one is called Fetal Center, so it's a very similar approach, again, resisting the temptation to design using materials, but the whole project budget for this particular site, I think 3,000 square feet total, was $250,000. It was so small, so little money. I know that probably sounds like a lot of money to you all. This is like no money for a commercial project. We spent half the money on another wall installation, just like the one I showed you. So that's asking a client group to believe in you and spend half their budget on a special wall. They're looking at you like, are you crazy? And you say, just trust me. We're going to treat your space like a museum and just basically amalgamate all the special stuff to one thing. We'll treat the rest like a museum, so quiet off everything else. We're not going to design everything, we're just going to design one thing. Elevate the sophistication of the space, quiet off the rest. So this space is for high-risk maternity or high-risk pregnancies. This is kind of a bad news place where couples go to get bad news that their pregnancy isn't going to turn out so great. So it needs to be a very peaceful place. It's not a high-touch clinical function, rather it's more of a consultative space. But see, you can do a lot with just a little bit of money. You can still create just a kind, elegant, kind of human-centric space. Very hospitality-focused again. And this, again, these are the digital pieces leading to the mock-up. All right. So now I've moved down to HKS, where I am currently running what we call the collective studio. And so my message to you here is interior design is not what you think. Yo. This project is the largest children's hospital on planet Earth. It is 6 million square feet. So when I am talking about interior design, and you know, the assumption is, to some people, fluffing pillows and applying some materials and picking some paint colors. The scale of the interior public atrium is 4 football fields in length. It just happens to have a roof on it. So you're designing this thing no different than a skyscraper tilted on its side, or a bridge, or any other kind of civically scaled project. That is how big it is. So check out how crazy ass looking this team structure is. Do you see the big purple blobs? That is offices speaking together every day around the world. So not only are we sharing a centralized Revit model, so communicating with one Revit model, and then running our kind of specialty computational models in like your, whatever your secret sauce is, your Rhino model, your Maya model, whatever it is that you need to be doing to do your special stuff. But we're on Skype calls or different kind of conference calls in Kuwait, Dubai, New Delhi, Orlando, Dallas, London, and I'm missing a couple of others. Every day you're communicating. Look at that team. I mean, there's everybody in the kitchen sink in there, and you're all synced up as equal contributors. So the artists in the room are as important as the structural engineer, who's as important as infrastructure, landscape architecture, interior design, architecture, and so on and so forth. And I'll show you why. Okay, that is the scale of the building. It's huge. It's the first consolidated pediatric model in the Middle East, so it's got primary, secondary, and tertiary care all together under one roof for the first time. It's got 30 ORs, so 30 surgical theaters, and 1,000 beds. This is just a concept elevation. So you've got in your mind 4 American football fields. That's basically them kind of stacked end to end for scale. I'm going to show you some of the renderings. So when I'm talking about like specialty fabrication pieces, do you see a person in there? Do you see the scale of the child? So when we're talking about artists, the idea was that it's sort of an underwater scheme. It's larger than life. So from the perspective of a child looking up, everything should be kind of like to delight, larger than life. Looking up through the water, you're sort of swimming with the fishes. So we've got sea creatures like turtles and fish and stingrays stilted up or sat on the ground or up in the air, whatever it is. So we've got a big whale, which happens to be a gaming room for siblings, so they can go in there and sit on their games or do whatever, play Roblox. I don't know, what do kids do? And we've got, jellyfish wrapped in bear salt. You know what that is? That's like a taut material wrapped so these are like lanterns suspended from the ceiling that are LED controlled, so they're color and light changing. And that is a resin cast model beside it to test it out. So now we've hired on consultants from Toronto to work with us, to create the art. We have a watercolorist now who's creating the Sea Friends, which is an ambassador program, which is really a signage and wayfinding program, because we're starting to mark out all of the different departments to pull people through the building. So now we've got artists that are, part of the project team from the beginning. I'm hoping that you can start to see that there's a place for everybody in projects like this. The deliverable for the concept phase of work for this project was 2 coffee table books, so 2 volumes, one called Architecture and one called Interior Design, presented to the Minister of Health and to the Minister of Public Works. All right, I'll go through this. Darren's standing up. Are we getting close? This is a healthcare project, and so when I told you I was going to tell you some secrets, here's my secret. I really don't like doing healthcare. Healthcare is to me, it's like a bag full of constraints. It's like the first thing that healthcare is about, well, we don't do this. And so, when I hear we don't do this, I just love that. I'm like, whoa, why don't we do this? That's to me. Tell me all the reasons why we don't do this. I just love that challenge. So Scottish Rite is actually a brilliant institution, and they do a lot of good in the world. So graphic designers in the room, they have this logo that is children carrying crayons that do scribbles of primary colors, and traditionally their design has been like scribbles of crayons on the floor, and the interior design has been like scribbles of crayons on the floor. So we're going to do that in the new facility. No, we're not going to do that in the new facility. Is there something that we can do to elevate that experience? Maybe we could take the idea of that and create something more experiential. Could we consolidate the thinking behind that and maybe elevate it more to the level of the Guggenheim? Is it possible that the idea of the primary colors of the crayon could be something that you would fully engage? And could we also encourage children and families to walk upstairs? So wouldn't that be good for us, like well thinking? Could we encourage, instead of taking the elevator, could we walk upstairs? Could we engage the space sectionally? So not only does that challenge the client group, more importantly, it challenges the healthcare design group who love to stay on a two-dimensional plan. Because to pull something like this off, you got to get into the section. You got to build models. You cannot do this by staying on a 2D plan, can you? You have to cut a section through the building, and you got to start to build some models. So, I do love pushing some buttons. I'm not going to lie to you, but it is very important, certainly in healthcare, but in every project, to get off the plan and start cutting your way through a building to see what can be found. Where are the opportunities? In this case, there were a lot of opportunities. Can that stair extrude itself? We did it, so the client was obviously satisfied with that as a solution. And can the stair become something even more? Can it lift off and complete itself with, can the gesture complete itself and become also a ceiling element? Can it also become a porte cochere? Can we actually illuminate the drive? This is just a building in the suburbs, but can we illuminate the driveway? Can we mark the arrival? Can we demark the building at night? Can it become a point of address? It can do all of those things. Can it become a kaleidoscope that illuminates a totally white space so we don't have to just paint color on white walls, which is really kind of a healthcare trick, is to sort of paint departments by color. Can we use light and colored glass to do that instead? It's so much more sophisticated. So, we were able to pull off a couple of hat tricks on this one. There's our little Guggenheim piece. So I put this last one in to be super cheeky. From our little studio at HKS called The Collective, with interior designers in it, we actually did the submission for the HQ2 Amazon bid. We did, I guess, unofficially come in third for that. So we did the submission for the City of Dallas and the Dallas Chamber of Commerce. From interior designers and architects, to which a lot of you in the room would go, that makes no sense at all. But it does make sense because of that first thesis that I described at the beginning, which was design impacts lives. I firmly believe that our usefulness as interior designers extends so much beyond the building, the interior of the building. This is what I believe. The interior designer lives where the humans are. We are uniquely skilled to design for the human experience in every physical environment. And I think I've been testing this now for a few years. I think that our skill set is equally valid in the exterior environment, even insofar as in master planning and in urban planning. My belief is that we have an incredibly useful skill set that uniquely advocates for the human being everywhere, inside, outside. And I think that aligning ourselves with all of our professional colleagues, with the planners, with the architects, with the landscape architects, is where we should be. And so stay tuned. Let's see what happens with our new definition moving forward. But I welcome everybody into the conversation of design and to Design Impacts Life. Thanks for listening, y'all. And I suck at timing, so that was pretty good. Yeah, maybe.
So my question is, where has getting an education in multiple disciplines really helped you, and maybe where you maybe would have made some adjustments along the way? For somebody who's kind of thinking about stepping into 2 different design disciplines, would you recommend that, or have you seen maybe more success with somebody specializing?
May I ask what design discipline you're thinking of?
Well, I'm in landscape architecture right now, and I'm thinking about joining more on the structural side, so architecture, just for the sake of the environmental aspect of it.
As in sustainability, specifically?
Yeah, sustainability and environmental design.
I mean, I don't want to provide to you my bias. So I think that listen straight up, landscape architecture and architecture are both brilliant choices. They're both very different. I'll answer that in 2 parts. Your first question was, where would I have gone? What would I have done different? Mine was like a progressive dinner party. And I was saying to the group earlier today, I think I just lacked courage, frankly. I kind of dipped my toe. So I did fine arts first, then I did interior design, then I did architecture. I wish I'd had the courage to just go for it, and I didn't. I sort of gained a little bit of courage as I went along, and I probably should have just gone for it. But I didn't. But, I believe that I gained perspective as I went, and that was very important. So there's that. Now, over to you. They're so different. They're going to provide uniquely different roles. You will be sitting in a totally different seat at the table. And so you probably have to think about where it is you want to sit. Now, from a sustainability perspective, I can't tell you enough how important that is today and how much more important that will be as we move forward. That would be probably one of the most important seats at the table in the future. So I don't know what value that has to you, but that's incredibly valid. Yeah.
I wish we could have a conversation.
Me too. Yeah. We could chat a bit more about that if you like. Yeah. They're both excellent choices, though.
Along the sustainability route, who do you come across in your big teams that you feel comes the most prepared with the most knowledge in sustainability? Where is...
Okay, this actually might help to answer your question a little bit more. Listen, guys, we are hiring on now chief sustainability officers. This is a real role. So just like we have a CEO, we have a CFO, we have a COO in our big firms, we now have a chief sustainability officer. And under that person, we have very high-level technical people who get invited onto every project team. So in a corporate firm, there are designers who kind of like highly paid athletes sort of fight for their pole position on each of the projects. Those sustainability people don't really do that. They're invited to every project. I'm not exaggerating. They're going to become the most important people on the project.
Where did they start? What were their stepping stones? What was their education?
Well, now they're going to be specially trained. So to date, they've had architecture training, and then they went on to specialize themselves through additional supplemental training. But now they're coming out with very high-level degrees, and many of them have PhDs, frankly. Yeah. And we're looking for that.
For probably one more question.
Okay. Do you want to pick it, Darren, so that I'm not... Was there another hand? Maybe we don't have one, so maybe that's problem solved. Oh, there, okay.
So you mentioned something about you shouldn't design with
Ask the question again.
You mentioned something about not designing with materials. What do you mean by that?
Okay. So I think the statement I made was resist the temptation to design with materials. Okay. And what I'm referring to is material application. For me, there is a major distinction between material application and sectional thinking and design, which means that the architect does their job, they hand off to you, you accept the plan. The walls are set, you're not touching walls, you're not affecting plan. Rather, what you're doing now is picking materials to apply to walls. So you're not really affecting programming or the spatial allocations of a plan. That is a totally different thing than affecting the manner in which people function in space. That's just straight up material application. So in the context of commercial practice and what we do when we're talking about performance-based outcomes, that's not what we're after. We want to talk about the way that people function in space. Materials are a part of that, but that's sort of that's a secondary or a tertiary part of our process. And if we're really good at sectional thinking or designing space, it's almost as though the materials start to call themselves out. Because we're designing in mass, volume, plane. That's a different way of coming at interior architecture. Instead of being seduced by, I saw this cool thing in a magazine, I saw this beautiful tile, and you're thinking of that tile before you're even thinking of the space and thinking of the needs of the people in the space. It's like inverting your thinking.
Jennifer, thank you.